Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass f- So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
We can now go live to Washington to speak to our correspondent, Simon Mark. Simon, thank you for joining me. A lot of criticism for President Trump's comments. How have those been playing out in Washington today?
Well, a lot of surprise here in Washington, of course, Leigh-Ann, because the White House had not telegraphed that Donald Trump was going to make that announcement. In the East Room of the White House, reporters were stunned when it was first articulated by the American president. And up on Capitol Hill, Democrats, of course, absolutely roundly condemning it. Senator Chris Coons of Delaware, an influential member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said, "You can report that I was speechless." He described the president's proposal as insane. He said, "I can't think of a place on earth that would welcome American troops less and where any positive outcome is less likely." There was withering criticism of the president's proposal from Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia, who, of course, was Hillary Clinton's running mate, a vice presidential candidate back in 2016. He said, "It's never, ever going to happen." Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, the only Palestinian-American member of the House of Representatives, described the president's proposal as ethnic cleansing. And even some prominent Republicans are very skeptical about it. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, again, a very influential figure on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, where, of course, the Republicans are now in the majority, said that he sees complexities with the president's proposal. He describes it as problematic on many, many levels. But the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, says he thinks it's interesting and he wants to hear more details about it. He is not the Republican leader in the House of Representatives shutting the door on the president's idea.
Yes, Simon, I think a lot of people were surprised when Donald Trump made those comments. But let's go to one of the complex issues. He didn't rule out sending US troops to Gaza to help facilitate his takeover plan. Tell us what he did say about this. I know he got a flurry of questions after his remarks.
He did, but he was very careful when those questions were asked, particularly the ones asking him where on earth he thought he was going to derive the legal authority to take this kind of action. He sidestepped those questions, but he certainly sees the US military playing a role. He did not address whether the US military would be involved in forcing Palestinians out of Gaza. Instead, he simply says, well, the Palestinians will see this as a great idea because how on earth could they possibly want to continue living in Gaza? But he indicated the military would go in, level Gaza, flatten it, make it safe, clear all the debris and prepare it, presumably then for private enterprise to move in and build all sorts of coastal facing apartment blocks, businesses, condominiums and private clubs on the Gaza shore looking out over the Mediterranean. But what sort of military deployment he envisages, he has not detailed. And of course, this is a president who has spoken relentlessly up until now about withdrawing the US military from entanglements in far off and distant parts of the world. So it's not clear how that suggestion of military involvement and engagement chimes with his broader doctrine on the use of the military.
Simon, how have Middle Eastern nations and Western allies reacted to his comments? Because we know that many countries are nervous because they're relying on the US and Trump. And obviously, we've seen him with tariffs. Is this a negotiating tool?
Yeah, well, I think raising the tariffs issue is a critical issue, Leigh-Ann. You're absolutely right, because the fear in many world capitals may well be that at some point Donald Trump starts saying to countries, allies, partners, competitors, you need to support my Gaza plan, or that's going to lead to greater tariffs against you if you don't. I mean, certainly in Europe, it's been roundly rejected as being completely impractical, unfeasible, and indeed illegal against the Geneva Conventions, particularly with regard to this notion that you can depopulate Gaza and expropriate the land. America, as Donald Trump said last night, intends simply to own Gaza. Well, there's no legal mechanism for that to occur. The government in Saudi Arabia expressed its unequivocal rejection of attempts to displace Palestinians and reiterated that it would not normalize ties with Israel in the absence of an independent Palestinian state. And remember that last night Donald Trump, to all intents and purposes, indicated that a two-state solution is no longer a bedrock of foreign policy under his leadership. The Egyptian Foreign Ministry said that aid and recovery programs for Gaza must begin without the Palestinians leaving. And one of the issues was the phraseology that Donald Trump used last night. He talked about Palestinians going back to Gaza. Well, they've never been allowed to leave Gaza. They're moving internally within Gaza. But that use of the phrase Palestinians going back to Gaza raised the question if he fully appreciates the complexities and the nuances of what Palestinian civilians are dealing with in a territory that they consider home.
Yes, indeed. Simon Marks in Washington, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds.
Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month.
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.